Welcome back, and hey, what a delight to have back with us. We had him on about a week or so ago, and I said, man, I want to get William back. William J. Murray's with us today. He is the chairman of the Religious Freedom Coalition in Washington, D.C. He's written a book. It's really quite fascinating, his latest book called The Utopian Road to Hell. We talked to him a little bit about his book. He's also known as the son of the former atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair. His own conversion to Christ is an interesting story, to say the least. But for quite a few years now, he's been heading up the, as chairman of the Religious Freedom Coalition in Washington, D.C., and that's what I want to talk to him about today. Hi, William. Good to see you again, my friend.
Great to be back on with you, Perry.
You know, we came through an incredible weekend where we saw Christians murdered in Pakistan. Good Friday, we saw a Catholic priest beheaded for his faith. And I just got through doing a segment where the FCC now basically wants to take away the licenses of a lot of Christian television stations in the United States. What's happening to us? What's happening to Christianity in America?
Well, Christianity is under attack worldwide, and secularists always are going to be cowards. And they are threatened by Islamic Jihad from a variety of places, and their answer to that is basically to punish Christians and make concessions to those who favor the Islamic way. We see that just virtually everywhere in Europe. We see it through American policy. We see it through immigration, rather than favoring the Christians that are the most persecuted group in the Middle East. The Obama administration actually deports Christians back to Iraq, as an example, and imports tens of thousands of Sunni Muslims, claiming that they're persecuted, when the reality is that virtually every single act of terror in the world is perpetrated by Sunni Muslims, not by the Shia and not by the Christians.
You know, I just returned about a week or so ago meeting with Christian broadcasters all over the world. We have quite an organization called United Christian Broadcasters, and we meet once a year somewhere to report. And most of them, and I'm talking a lot from the Commonwealth countries and other countries, are saying, wait a minute, we don't want America to lose its Christian and moral authority, but you guys are falling apart. Even the other nations are beginning to see what's happening to us.
Well, they are, and we have to remember that the Koreans now have active missionaries in the United States trying to win people to Christ. So there's a combination of things going on. Of course, it moves up from the media to politics, not from politics down. And Christianity has been under attack in the media, particularly the Hollywood media, now for a decade. And we see the entire entertainment industry is leaning toward making fools of Christians, making bad examples, trying to portray Christianity as somehow bad or evil, and the other forces in the world, and particularly the secularist forces, as good, of trying to erase any type of sin in the world, of telling this lie, basically, that that mankind is basically good, when in fact mankind is inherently evil, and we need a structure for mankind to follow, provided by God, in order to at least try to do some good on earth. And we see this has now moved into politics, where the politics is anti-Christian, and where the freedom of religion in the United States is under attack, and particularly this administration, current administration, is attempting to replace freedom of religion today. Freedom of worship, not freedom of religion.
I don't want to get into that a little bit. By the way, let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to religiousfreedomcoalition.org. That's where William's website is, religiousfreedomcoalition.org. Okay, now, let me come back a little bit on what you said. This president, who has said he's a Christian, now has advanced himself to be the Christian arbiter on all truth, to the point where he turns around and scolds Christians for what they think and believe. and he's putting down Christianity and giving every kind of tolerance to the radical Islamic faith. Who is he really in your eyes?
I think he typifies the generation that was raised in. I mean, a lot of people say, "Well, he's a Muslim, and this is why he's doing this." No, I don't even think when he says he's a Christian, what he means he comes from a Christian tradition. Joe Biden will actually say that. By the way, the vice president, he will say, "I am from a Christian tradition." He never says I'm a Christian or I'm a Catholic, or he'll say I'm from a Catholic tradition. And they don't view religion as pertinent to your daily life. They believe that religion is something that you came out of, that's the tradition of your family, that it isn't, that there's no rules, that there's nothing that or traditions that go with that you should be lived by today. And Obama just really was raised in that vacuum of that. He had his way paid through a very expensive private school. Then he went to very expensive universities that were highly secular, where Christianity was put in doubt, where he was educated that, for instance, that the Muslims moving into Jerusalem, 1,500 years ago and slaughtering the Christians and taking the women as slaves and killing the men, that was a good thing, and then it was a bad thing for the Crusaders to go there and try to liberate Jerusalem from the Muslims. And when somebody is raised and educated in that way, the result is what we have. Somebody that doesn't understand the importance of religion inside of the lives of an individual, someone who looks at it as a secondary thing, something that you do in a building somewhere, but that isn't part of your life.
Oh, their brand of Christian tradition, that would suggest pluralism. Would you agree with that? Okay, I think we got a little bit of. Did you hear that, Bill? Or William? I'm sorry. I would say, if they're saying Christian tradition would be some form of pluralism, is that correct?
Yes, one Christian tradition or another, and they don't, because it is a tradition and not something to live by, they don't see a Christian tradition as being different than a Hindu tradition or a Muslim tradition or any other. It's just something that you have there in the background. But in the secular society, you're all supposed to function according to what the government tells you to function. So it doesn't matter what your religion tells you to do. If you're a Christian photographer, a Christian cake maker, this or that or the other thing, the government can order you to participate in something that you find to yourself to be unethical. If you're a nurse, you can be forced to participate in an abortion, even if you're a Christian, because and you're opposed to that, or lose your job, because your tradition should have nothing to do with the way you function on a daily basis. That should only be up to the government.
They now have coined the phrase, which really has a big meaning behind it, freedom of worship, not freedom of religion. Explain the difference.
Well, there's a big difference. Freedom of worship, of course, is what you're allowed to do inside a building. Freedom of religion is what you can do throughout your life anywhere. Folks don't really realize that there is a reason that freedom of religion is mentioned first in the First Amendment to the Constitution, and then the freedom of speech and press and assembly is mentioned after that. And that is because without freedom of religion, you have no freedom of speech, freedom of press, or freedom of assembly. And let me explain for people that don't get that. If the government can restrict your speech, if the government can restrict your religious speech, then they can restrict any speech you have. If the government can restrict your freedom of religious press, of what you're allowed to print and say about your religion, then they can restrict any form of freedom of press. And the same goes for assembly. If they can say you can only assemble inside your church building, then they can say, okay, politically, you're only allowed to assemble here, you're only allowed to assemble there. And if you want to take a look at how bad this can get, Take a look at the universities in the United States that set aside 10 by 10 foot square areas on campus and say, all right, you have freedom of speech inside this 10 by 10 foot area, but there are a lot of things you can't say anywhere else because it might offend somebody. That is the net result of taking away freedom of religion, because that is the core freedom. Without freedom of religion, there are no other freedoms. Anybody that doesn't believe this, take a look at nations that don't have freedom of religion. The old Soviet Union, there were no other freedoms there. Take a look at the other communist countries, no freedom. Take a look at Nazi Germany, its restriction and management of the church, and there were no other freedoms. Take a look at the Islamic nations today and that restrict religious freedom, and you see they also restrict freedom of press, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly in all other areas. So freedom of religion is the absolute key. Without that, there cannot be any other freedoms.
All right. Now, we are now facing, as a culture, as a world, one of the greatest hypocrisies ever. While we're trying to restrict the freedom of religion, i.e. Christianity, and tolerate the freedom of a religion that allows the killing of innocent people. We've never seen this conflict before.
Well, this is a refusal to recognize the enemy, and it goes a lot deeper. I have some long presentations and columns that I have written on it, but sadly, a lot of this comes down to money. The reality is that if you want to look at where the terror attacks have came from, every single major terror attack against the West has been by Sunni Muslims. That includes 9/11, the First World Trade Center, the Madrid train bombing, the London bus bombings, the Paris attack, San Bernardino, Fort Hood, you name it, and they have been perpetrated by Sunni Muslims. But we can't say that, because they are financed, and the extremist Sunni philosophy is Wahhabism, and that is financed by Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is our big ally, and they are our friends, and we're not allowed to say anything against Saudi Arabia, and we can't boycott Saudi Arabia. And even though they execute more people than any other nation, even though they're merciless, even though they have destroyed every hospital and school in Yemen, using the weapons that we have furnished them in the last year, they're the nice guys, they're our true allies, and we have to defend them no matter what. This is why, after 9/11, the Saudi royal family members were allowed to fly out of the United States when every other aircraft in the United States was forced to sit on the ground for weeks. And once we put that financial aspect in there, the fact that Saudi Arabia can collapse the U.S. currency anytime they want to, by saying we're not going to trade our oil in dollars anymore. We're going to trade it in rubles, or we're going to trade it in yen, or we're going to trade it in the euro. The minute that they do that, the U.S. economy collapses, and our mighty dollar becomes virtually nothing once oil is not traded in dollars. So, you know, the catering to the Sunnis has a lot more to do than intellectual. It has a lot to do with money, and it has a lot to do with the United States selling itself out intellectually for a buck.
Wow. All right, let me take a quick break right here. We'll come back with William Murray. By the way, he is the chairman of the Religious Freedom Coalition in Washington, D.C. Let me encourage you to go to their website, support what they do, religiousfreedomcoalition.org. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, welcome back, and what a delight to have with us William Murray. He's the chairman of the Religious Coalition in Washington, D.C. And let me encourage you to go to their website, check out all their materials, support them, religiousfreedomcoalition.org. And William, again, thank you for your time and what you do. It appears to me we could be one election cycle from losing totally our religious freedoms. Is that too much to say?
We've lost a lot already, and we have an enforcement of what we were talking about before, which is a freedom of worship, not freedom of religion, where you can do whatever you want to inside of your building where you worship, but when you get outside of that, you can't practice your religion anymore without being at least socially punished, and perhaps with the loss of your job or something like that, or perhaps even fined or jailed. And this gets very, very bad, and gets very bad quickly. And to give you an example of that, right after these last attacks in Brussels, a man in the UK a Christian said to a Muslim woman, "Well, now what do you think after Brussels?" And he was arrested for this because that was a racist comment. And we are fast headed toward this in the United States. As to what this election cycle means, I am not sure. We have typically seen that when a conservative is elected after a liberal just tears apart the social fabric of the country, all that happens is the status quo freezes. It never goes back. It never gets better. And it just freezes until the next radical comes in, and then they tear it apart more, and then a conservative gets elected and they freeze it for a while. But nobody makes the attempt to go back and fix the destruction that has been done. And this is what I fear the most. I have a fear that in this next election, if a Republican gets in, that nothing is going to happen to restore the religious liberties in this nation. They're just going to kind of freeze the situation the way it is, which is typically what they have done. And I don't know what is worse, because when the conservatives do that and they freeze it in place, then that makes it the status quo, what has been going on, the status quo, which I think is even more dangerous than when we see the damage actually being done.
Wow. I've never quite, that was so simple and yet so profound and so true. I've never quite seen it that way, where you go from freeze to advancement, back to freeze to advancement. All right, let's just be a little wishful thinking. What would you like a conservative president to do to protect religious freedoms?
Well, one of the things that a lot of these rules and regulations have to be done away with, the idea that government, and a lot of it, by the way, has been done bureaucratically, and yes, some by the courts, including the situation with making homosexual marriage a right, but when marriage is not a right at all, it is a privilege. It is a license, like a driver's license that somebody goes down and gets from the government, and this is a privilege, and the government can take away or give privileges. This has absolutely nothing to do with a basic human right. And to force somebody to be involved in whatever ceremonies or anything that have to do with homosexual marriage, just as an example, that doesn't believe in it is wrong and outrageous. And a president could go in there and undo most of this just by taking and signing different orders than the current executive orders than the president of the United States has. He can the next president could undo most of the executive orders, or all of the executive orders that Barack Obama has put into effect that damages these. The other thing is the bully pulpit that the president has, of actually getting up and in front of the public and saying this is right and this is wrong, rather than being mealy-mouthed about it, which is what we currently have in a variety of different ways.
All right, so do you see any hope in any of the candidates?
You know, that's hard to say, because unfortunately we have moved so far away from the moral underpinnings of the country that most people don't vote those issues anymore, not even Christians. They're voting economic issues, they're voting foreign affairs issues, they're voting out of fear, they're voting for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with core values, and the media is leading them in order to do just.
Hold on.
issues are immigration and security and jobs and factories moving overseas, and they have nothing to do with the fact that we are, in the meantime, while all of these other things are happening, losing some of our basic freedoms.
Okay, I'm also hearing you say here, because if we do the numbers, William, we know that the Christian vote in America is substantial. And I don't know if the average Christian knows that their religious freedom is being torn apart. And I'm not here to put blame on pastors or organizations, but it appears to me that if the Christian vote shows up, it changes things to the point where they become influential and they put religious freedom back on the table.
Yeah, if the It goes back to the question of, what is a Christian? Is a Christian somebody that says they're a Christian, or is a Christian somebody that believes in the 10 basic tenets of Christianity, including the existence of hell, the existence of heaven, the virgin birth, the resurrection of Christ, and their eternal salvation through his sacrifice? Just being going to church because your parents go to church doesn't necessarily mean you're a Christian or that you're going to vote like a Christian. And we have a large number of people, that they do these exit polls that they classify as Christians because they said they were Christians. And then you look at how they voted and why they voted, and you're going, well, that just doesn't make sense.
Well, the struggle is that Christians don't see these issues as part of their Christian responsibility. They've been categorized as political, therefore leave them alone.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. We have too many that the propaganda as to what you're allowed to do and what is religious freedom and what isn't religious freedom, and what the society deems as being proper and right. There was a period in Israel after King David where making sacrifices of infants and burying them at your doorstep in order to bring a good financial luck to the family was an acceptable thing to do. I mean, they were actually some people worshiping Moloch, and this is just because society is doing it or society is approving it doesn't make it right. And by the way, we still sacrifice babies to Moloch today for the financial good of the family. We call it family planning and say, well, if we abort this baby, the family will be better off financially, so it's okay. It really is the same thing as the sacrifices that were done to Moloch several thousand years ago. But because society says that's right, does not make that right, doesn't make it right in the eyes of God. And a lot of Christians just really aren't understanding that because it isn't preached from the pulpit, which is exactly what you're told. We have a lot of feel-good messages coming from the pulpit right now because pastors, to a great extent, are afraid to tell people in the congregation, you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell.
All right, William, I only got about 90 seconds left. What's your biggest concern or challenge as you look for America? What's our biggest challenge ahead?
Our biggest challenge is the Islamic threat to the nation. I mean, let's just get real. I see what's going on. I work in the Middle East. We have a program called Diapers for Refugees. I have a program called Christmas for Refugees. I'm over in the Middle East very, very frequently. I see what is happening to the church over there. I see what is happening to Christians over there, and we are inviting that here, and we need to deal with it. And having politicians, having elected officials that ignore it or champion it at the expense of Christianity, that want to destroy, who perhaps don't even realize that they are destroying something very, very fundamental in our nation, that once it is gone, it isn't going to be revived very easily, and there will be devastation to follow.
Oh. How can we help you? How can we support you?
Well, religiousfreedomcoalition.org, and we also please take a look at our Diapers for Refugee page at diapersforrefugee.org, or our Christmas for Refugee program at christmasforrefugees.org.
All right. Again, William Murray, check out his book. It's available at the stores, or go to Amazon, The Utopian Road to Hell. There's a picture of it there on the screen. You can correspond with him and support what they do. Believe me, it's an outstanding organization doing, well, our work. Go to religiousfreedomcoalition.org. That's all one word, religiousfreedomcoalition.org. William, nice to have you again, my friend. Blessings on you, and let's stay connected, okay?
Thank you, Perry. God bless.
All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.